Ruth chapter 3. Ruth's mother-in-law Naomi said to her, "My daughter, shouldn't I find rest for you so that you will be taken care of? Now isn't Boaz our relative? Haven't you been working with his female servants? This evening he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfumed oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but do not let the man know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, notice the place where he is lying. Go in, uncover his feet, and lie down. Then he will explain to you what you should do." So Ruth said to her, "I will do everything you say." She went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law had charged her to do. After Boaz ate, drank, and was in good spirits, he went to lie down at the end of the pile of barley, and she came secretly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was a woman. He asked, "Who are you?" "I am Ruth, your servant," she replied. "Take me under your wing, for you are a family redeemer." Then he said, "May the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before, because you have not pursued younger men, whether rich or poor. Now do not be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say, since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Yes, it is true that I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that is good. Let him redeem you. But if he does not want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down until morning." So she lay down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark. Then Boaz said, "Do not let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." And he told Ruth, "Bring the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she held it out, he shoveled 6 measures of barley into her shawl, and she went into the town. She went to her mother-in-law, Naomi, who asked her, "What happened, my daughter?" Then Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. She said, "Give me these 6 measures of barley," because he said, "Do not go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed." Naomi said, "My daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he resolves this today." The word of the Lord.
Thanks, Joe. Would you pray with me? Father, we live in a time, in a place that really does seem to resemble in many ways this time period, the time of the judges. And Lord, and yet we see in here such a beautiful picture of redemption. And Lord, we know that you are the Redeemer, that all of the Bible is pointing to you, what you have done, Jesus, on your work on the cross. And so, Lord, as we look at this morning, I pray that that pops out, but also, Lord, I pray that, Lord, that we also, as we sit here on a Father's Day, that we might see what a good man is. Lord, I pray that you will use my words this morning. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I want to start off maybe a little bit unusual for an intro. Any guy in the room, I want you to verbally answer me when I ask you this question. What comes to your mind in our present day when I say the word masculine? Come on. Anybody? What was that? Toxic. Oh. Anything else? Strong. Okay. Any? What? Courageous? Okay. Any other ones? What was that? Protector. I'm glad that there were some positives in there because the first one was what everyone thought. Am I right? Mike said it. Toxic. You almost never see the word masculine today without followed by or starting with toxic. And our culture loves to talk about toxic men. The betrayal of men. I read some stuff this week. A guy did some research. A researcher did some research, and over 200 media feeds, and he found any time that a man was spoken of, 75% of those articles, it was in a negative light. And we all know that, right? I mean, you watch a sitcom. What's on the sitcom? Either it is, or a Disney movie for that matter, right? I love to pick on Disney. It's terrible. Terrible. But anyways, you have either a villain, he's some kind of toxic thing, or he's at best a buffoon, right? That's what we have. The thing is that and I think we actually do see in our culture that men are living up to the standard that we've called them to, right? I sat, my plane was delayed this week, and so I sat there in a restaurant because I had nothing to do, as you do in an airport, and you're hungry. And I sat next to some guys that got off of the Red Dog mine, and they're on their way home. And you want to talk about toxic masculinity. These guys were the epitome. It was grody, right? Some of you who've ever worked construction in Alaska know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think the sentiment keeps going. When we were down in Washington, friends that we stayed with, they have a daughter in her 20s. She's like, I can't even find a man that's half decent, period. Made me think of the song, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? Which is funny because cowboys were notoriously bad, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think it just stops with men. I actually think that we do this with boys, too. That our culture tells and it paints boys in a negative light. How do I know this? Well, I used to work with kids, and one is that's typically how people would do it. And in fact, parents will do it. Like, I have daughters, and people would say, well, you don't understand, you don't have boys. As in, they're negative. It's a negative thing. And there are differences for sure. But what are the messages that we've been pushing down? Like, what are the messages that we promote? We know what a bad man is. True? I know you're thinking, does this have anything to do with the text? Oh, it absolutely has to do with the text. I'm going to get to it here in a minute. But do we know what a good man is? Do we know, as we're sitting here, and this is Father's Day, I've never done a Father's Day message in my life, and today is the day. I've never done a Mother's Day. Today is the day, because here in the text, we actually find what a good man is. We actually see what a good man does. See, Ruth is in the same predicament. She's in a time, in the time of Judges, where everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes. We've noticed, too, as she's going to work in these fields, the way that she can go glean to provide, she's actually at danger. That's why Boaz says, like, hey, just work in my fields. Work next to these ladies here. And I've told everyone, don't touch her, right? Why? Because she lives in a time where toxic masculinity, if you will, is a real thing. If you remember back, too, that she lives in a time where there is no inheritance for her. She actually needs a good man. She's dependent upon it. Today, I want to look at what does a good man look like? What does a good man look like? Today, we're also going to be talking about the benefit of a man. I actually have a bunch of statistics for you. I know you're really excited about statistics, but I'm going to have them for you today. And I hope that by the end of today, that the men and women in this church are excited about men being good men. Let's start in verse 1. Ruth Ruth's mother-in-law, Naomi, this is chapter 3, said to her, "My daughter, should I rest for you so that you will be taken care of?" So far, we've been seeing that Ruth has been committed to her mother-in-law, that she's been providing for her. If you remember back in chapter 1, this is the reply when Naomi said, "Go away, go to your own land, go worship your old gods, go back to your family, do what you need to do, you go do you." And this is what Ruth said to her. In verse 16, "Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not to follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do severely if anything but death separates you and me." Big statement. She's committing her whole life, her eternal life, even banking on her God, the God of the Israelites. She's going to go and be and care for her no matter what. And we've seen that she's been doing that. She's been going to the fields. She's been gleaning, doing whatever she can, even while Naomi's sitting at home, to provide and care for her. Now, Naomi, all of a sudden here, has been kind of a jerk the whole time, right? I mean, I would say she hasn't been very pleasant. But here, all of a sudden, you see Naomi all of a sudden change. You catch that in verse 1. She's like, well, maybe I should not just think about myself. Maybe I need to start thinking about you. So check it out in verse 2. She says, "Now, it's Boaz. Now, isn't Boaz our relative?" Pause really quick. Remember that this is a tradition, not just in the Jewish culture, but also in cultures around the Middle East, that there would be some relative, a kinsman redeemer, to redeem a family member, to marry them into the family so that their wealth would continue, because the wealth line always went through the man. So here she's saying, "Isn't Boaz our relative?" Which is funny, because Naomi had come back to town and was like, "I'm with nothing." All of a sudden now she's like, "Our relative?" Remember, we're together. "Haven't you been working with the female servants? This evening he will be winnowing the barley on the threshing floor. Wash, put on perfume, oil, and wear your best clothes. Go down to the threshing floor, but do not let the men know that you are there until he is finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, notice the place where he lies down and go in, uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will explain what you should do." Okay, so what's happening here? It's the end of the harvest, of the barley harvest. And what they do is they've collected it, and now they're beating it out, right? If you've ever seen wheat, it's got a coating around it. So they're taking that off, and what they're doing is celebrating. This is a celebration. They're going to eat and they're going to drink because the harvest is done. Right? They've been working their buns off, and now they're just going to enjoy. But that's not the only thing that's happening here, because what they're doing is actually going to be guarding. They're guarding what they've done, because they don't want somebody to come in at night, collect all the grain, and leave. So they're going to sleep right there as guardians. Now you got to remember too, this is a time period where there's no lights. It's pitch black. So here he is. He's going to go to sleep. He's eating. He's drinking. They've had a good time, and now he's out. And she's telling her, "Go in. First of all, go wash up. Put on your best clothes. Go." And there's this weird thing about uncovering his feet that you and I are like, well, that's weird. Okay. So, okay, I just want to think about this. This is her plan. Naomi says, "I've got a plan for you. This is what I want you to do." Remember that Ruth has been submissive under her authority, Naomi's authority. So this is her plan. Part of the plan is good, and part of the plan, I would say, is rotten. It's a bad idea. The first one, go get cleaned up. It's nice when you don't smell, right? I mean, this is just, she's been laboring. That's what she's been doing. Go wash, wear your best clothes. Boaz will be at the threshing floor. We know where he is. And then says, "Go at night." I would not let my daughter do this. Multiple reasons. One is that she's already, if you remember, in a vulnerable state. Now you're in dark, and now you're going to a place that is a suggestive behavior, if you will. the pulling off of the sheet, the blanket, is a suggestive thing. But Ruth says, I will do as you say. So at midnight, Boaz, verse 8, Boaz was startled. Yeah, no kidding. Is there something at his feet? Turning over, and there lying at his feet was a woman. That's a shocker. I thought I was guarding grain. So he asked, who are you? I am Ruth, your servant, she replied. Take me under your wing, for you are the family redeemer. So Ruth goes, if you look at this, she's actually doing her plan, except for she doesn't fully go with her plan. Did you see what it had said before? Then he will explain, is what Ruth said. Said, go do this thing, and then he will explain what you should do. That's not what Ruth does. Because Ruth is an upstanding citizen. And she's a moral lady with character. She also knows the character of Boaz. She's been watching this guy for a while. She doesn't wait for him to act. She declares who she is, and then do you see what she says? She says, take me under your wing. She's actually asking to be redeemed. She's asking him to be the protector. Now, if you remember back, that this is what Boaz had said to her, may the Lord cover you with his wing. Right now, she's saying, actually, would you be the manifestation of God right now here to me? But not just to her. You see, here's the thing. And I'm off my notes, so I'll might have to have a pause later. Here's the thing. What she's actually asking for, she could have gone and found another guy, okay? But what she's saying is, would you come and would you redeem? And it's not just a redeeming of me. She's got her mother-in-law in mind. Not only that, this is actually a very Exodus moment. God is in Exodus 19 says that he would cover his people. And if you look at Deuteronomy 32, there's a song of Moses where God is called to guide his people with the eagle's wings, covering them. 1 Samuel 2 has this prayer of Hannah where she says, he raises the poor from the dust and lifts the needy from the trash heap. He seats them with nobles and gives them a throne of honor. From the foundation of the earth, the Lord, he has set the world on. So this idea here's the idea, is that would God come and cover his people, lead his people? And so what she's doing is asking for this thing that has happened before in time, that he would be the manifestation of what God does to his people. His God comes, he rescues those that cannot rescue themselves, he takes them out of bondage, and he redeems them. She's requesting that Boaz act on her behalf. This is what I really want to focus on today. Is how is he a good man? What is it that he is doing? What is she asking him to do? Two major things. She's asking him to provide and to protect. She isn't demanding it. You notice that? There isn't a demand. She's requesting, please help me. Why? Because she can't help herself. She's unable. The first two things, let me do that slide. There you go. A good man provides, protects, and is proper. And I'll get to that one. I know that's a weird one, but I had to have 3 P's and it worked. Okay? So just stay with me. You know, every once in a while I got to get it right. First of all, he provides. A good man provides. We see this over and over again with him. He's been providing her with grain that she can take back to Naomi. And at the end of here, you see that he actually fills, he says, pull out your cloak, and he's going to fill it up again with what is probably about 80 pounds, which she's a tough lady, man. She's going to carry that back home. 80 pounds. So a good man provides. 1 Timothy 5:8 tells us, if anyone does not provide for their relatives, especially for their own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Those are strong words. A good man, he provides. He provides for his family. Paul in 1 Timothy is connecting the man providing this provision with his faith. In other words, there is a connection between your faith in God and your action to provide. You are called to a new standard. Instead of being called to something lowly like a man-child or a toxic masculinity, you're actually called to something else, called to provide, to care for. Now, I want to pause on here, though. I think most of us in the room go, yeah, that's good. Yeah, hey, she probably have a job. That's probably a good way to provide. I don't think, though, that providing is strictly financial. I think that is a lie that I've read, a lot of men have gotten into. If I just go work this job, by the way, that's a new concept in the world, to just go work a job. It used to be that men would actually be around the home because they had farm, right? So the idea of providing isn't exclusively a job. You make money. You know what else it isn't? Is providing enough money so that you have that nice white picket fence. In other words, whatever your wife wants, you give her. I've heard this from the pulpit. You need to provide to that extent. That is also not true. Whatever her compulsion to buy is not necessarily the thing you need to provide. Providing is providing, not doting over. But a good man isn't just to provide financial. A man isn't a slave to his wife's desires for financial security. Here's what it is. Look at Ephesians 5, starting in verse 25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her, to make her holy, cleansing her with the washing of the water by the word. He did this to present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or anything like that, but holy and blameless. In the same way, so he's been talking about what the church, how God cares for the church and how he leads the cleansing of her. Yes, churches are her. In the same way, husbands are to love their wives as their own body. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one ever hates his own body, but provides and cares for it, just as Christ does the church, since we are the members of the body. A husband provides not just financial care, but also he points them to Christ. That's a provision to provide more, to provide support. In other words, to provide them with more than just finances. Did you know a child needs more than just food and water to survive? They do. What do they need? Studies have shown that they need affection. If they don't have affection, they will die. That is a provision to care for them, to point them in the right direction, to love on them, to dote on them in the right direction for the right reason. Not just because you want to flatter them, but rather you want them to flourish and grow. This might actually mean working less hours. Did you catch that? It might mean that you work less hours. Why? So that you can be home to provide your kids and your wife with what they actually need. That support, that care. But I want you to notice something. Providing is always a selfless posture. When Boaz provides for Ruth, it's not for gain. Think about it. What is he gaining from any of this? You're like, well, he's gaining a wife. Okay. He doesn't know that yet. None of these times that he provides does he even know that. So what is he doing? He is selflessly caring for them. Men, that's your job. You're called to selflessly, just like Christ has loved the church and gave himself. That's a sacrificial action. That's your call. Second, a good man protects. Ruth specifically asks for his covering of the wing, that he might be the one that protects. In other words, she's not disconnecting and saying, I need just you. She's associating what he said that God would do for her with him. It was interesting when we said masculine, other than the toxic, what did you hear? Strong, things like that. I know there's buff ladies out there, but in general, men are strong, but that's for a reason. It's for protection. But I do want to pause really quick, because this is another one that I think is easily misunderstood. Packing heat doesn't necessarily mean protection. How often has your house been broken into? Not that often. You're in Eagle River. Notice he doesn't do that. He doesn't go, I'll protect you, and pull out a sword and wield it. No, that's not what he's doing. Boaz has a reputation, doesn't he? He tells the servants back in chapter 2, don't mess with her. Don't you mess with her. When she's in this field, she's under my protection. Yeah, she's not mine. She's not my wife, but I'm here to protect her. He protects her with his own reputation. Not necessarily a tough guy, but a guy that's a guy of his word. You notice that that's been a thing that he's had over and over again? People know that when he says something, he means it. He's going to do it. I think that's one of the better sense of protection that you can be as a man, is to be a man of your word, to say something so that people know, okay, I'm going to protect them. Let's look at his response. Let's look at Boaz's response. Then he said, may the Lord bless you, my daughter. You have shown more kindness now than before. Sorry, verse 10, I don't know if I said that. Because you have not pursued young men, whether rich or poor. Now, don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say, since all the people in my town know that you are a woman of noble character. Yes, it is true, I am a family redeemer, but there is a redeemer closer than I am. Stay here tonight, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he does not want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will. Now lie down until morning. Notice the first thing that Boaz says to her. He says to her, you have shown kindness. Now, I've heard this, and I read commentaries, and I'm going to honestly disagree with most of them. Most of them are like, well, he's an older man, so he's like, well, thanks for looking at me. I don't think that's what's happening here. Why do I say that? Because she was free to marry any man. That's what he's getting at. You're free to go marry any man. Why are you coming to me? Why specifically Boaz? Well, because he's a kinsman redeemer. Who will be redeemed? Not Ruth. Naomi. You'll see that at the end, when they have a child, the child is placed on Naomi's lap because it's her husband Elimelech's name that will continue. So what he's saying is, you have been showing kindness to this lady that you are not connected with. You do not have to do any of this. And yet here you are. Not only have you cared for her in financial ways and been the one to go work the fields, you have actually shown even more kindness than before, because you are literally giving up your inheritance for this lady. Remember, if she has a son, Ruth has a son, that's an inheritance. But if she gives up her son, that's not her inheritance anymore. He's saying, Holy smokes. The amount of love and care you have is mind-blowing. And now what you're asking me to do is actually not inherit the wealth either, but to step in and join you in the redemption of Naomi. Church, this is an amazing thing that's happening here. This isn't a normal love story, thank goodness. Because what actually is happening here is you have people stepping in the gap to care for those that can't care for themselves in an extreme way. And it's beautiful. It's way better than most love stories. Because their love is not necessarily, oh, you make me feel good, which will go away, right? It will. But what they're doing is stepping in the gap because they love the unlovable. They love the one that cannot redeem themselves. This is a picture of the church. This is a picture of the church, what Jesus does in the redemptive work. You and I are not lovable. I'm sorry. I know your mom told you you were. But you are not lovable in that you don't deserve anything. And yet Jesus takes on flesh and he comes and he actually steps in the gap where you can't actually be to redeem you to the Father. He's the kinsman redeemer. But let's look at the third way Boaz is a good man. He is a proper. I know. Not pinkies up, teacup. No. Do you guys know what the actual definition of proper is? Not in the way we normally do it. That's why I have it here. Ready? Truly what something is said or regarded to be genuine. In other words, it's somebody that's genuine. They do what they're said they're going to do. They're proper. He's the same guy in the dark that he is in the light. Did you catch that about him? She goes to him in a scandalous way. She declares her intention, and what does he do? Take advantage of her? I don't know, but he'll know. No. He's the same guy in the light when everyone is surrounding him as he is in the dark. He also doesn't jump through, he doesn't jump to conclusions. In other words, he's a guy that's actually going to go through the proper channels. That's where that whole section about there's another Redeemer that's ahead of me. He could just be like, well, we don't need to bother with that. Well, I'll just do it, right? No, he actually is like, no, we're going to go through the right way to do this. We're going to go to the right path to do this. I'm not going to cut a bunch of corners. We're going to be upstanding the whole time. Lastly, he seeks her dignity. He seeks for her to keep her dignity. Verse 14, so she laid down at his feet until morning. Notice he didn't send her right away. She rests. So she laid down at his feet until morning, but got up while it was still dark. Then Boaz said, don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor. And he told Ruth, bring your shawl you're wearing and hold it out. And when she held it out, he shoveled 6 measures of barley into the shawl, and she went into town. Regardless of what happens in the morning, I want you to be cared for. But he also keeps her dignity. He doesn't want this to be a scandalous thing regardless of what happens, right? He doesn't want it to be a mark on her that she came at night. He wants her to be dignified. He doesn't want her to, he could have easily just been like, I can humiliate you here right now. But even if he doesn't marry her, he's trying to keep her dignity. So he provides for her, he protects her, and he is proper. He's a good man. But more than that, Boaz is a foreshadow of what we see in Jesus. Jesus is a family redeemer. Did you realize that? That's why he took on flesh. That's why he became a man, is to redeem you and me. Because he had to be in the family to redeem us. Jesus is a better Boaz. He's not obligated to love. This is where a lot of American churches go wrong. They think God is obligated to love you. He's not. He chose to. Jesus, who had all power like Boaz, but even more so, he lowered himself. You realize that Boaz had a position, a stature, and he's going to redeem a Moabite inbred lady? He lowered himself. Jesus lowered himself, not for his benefit, but for ours. He was humiliated. He was dishonored when we should have been the one that were dishonored. We were the scandalous ones. And yet he redeems us. Like Boaz, he didn't seek his personal gain. He cared for the vulnerable. Jesus cared for the vulnerable. He isn't lazy. He protects. He honors. And he took responsibility, and he will take responsibility till the end to redeem. But I don't want to just leave you with that. Because I think that there's one thing that we hear about men and toxic men, and we know what a good man is intuitively, don't we? We know intuitively. But I also want to encourage the guys and the ladies that are married to those guys in particular, that there has been a narrative that the conservative, if you will, Bible-believing evangelical man is the evil one. True? You heard this one. I am sure you have. That this is where men are oppressing women. But I want you to know, this is why I have statistics, that this is horse. The largest study ever done on men, 3,366 over an expansive time by a guy named Wilcox. You can do the first one. There's 3 different definitions we're going to have here. They did studies for other faiths too, but I'm just doing Christianity. There's 3 different categories. One's the secular. In other words, they don't believe in the God of the Bible. There is the committed Protestant, which I'm putting there. It's the evangelical Protestant, but I use too many words. So I just put it committed. That's one who identifies with the traditional Christian view and regularly attends a church. That regularly attends a church is actually really important. What do I mean by regularly attends? This is the 4 weeks out of a month attender. That's the category that they did this in. So I think that's important to note, because above it, it's a nominal. Now, that's not mainline nominal. This means a nominal. It's somebody that identifies with the Christian faith, but sporadically participates with the local church. Okay? These are the 3 categories. Now, I want you to see this as for what it is. Okay? Largest study ever done. Let's go to the next slide. We're going to talk about divorce rates compared to secular. You've been told that it's the same with Christians as it is with non-Christians. True? That's what you've been told? By the way, this is a University of Chicago researcher, and I've read other ones from Harvard as well. The same type of statistics pop out. The committed Protestant is 35% less likely to get divorced. The regular attendant is 35% less likely to get divorced. The nominal is 20% more likely to get divorced. Wait, what? What is this telling you right here? What is this telling you? if you've got the secular line right here, committed, those that are committed, those that are like, I believe in this, and I'm gonna actually change the way that I live. I'm gonna actually show up. I'm gonna be committed to the faith. They're 35% less likely to have divorce. But those that are like, well, I'm kind of in and I'm kind of out, 20% more likely. In other words, the statistics, when you see that the secular is different than the Christian, or the same as the Christian, it's only because they're mixing the two together. Those that don't really believe, those that don't really identify, versus those that actually do. Go to the next one. Domestic violence. Committed Protestant have the lowest rate of all men in America for domestic violence. It's super low. The nominal, 7.2% higher than those that don't even believe in God. What's going on here? It's weird, isn't it? That's a bad statistic. You mean those that claim to be Christian, whatever the same denominations you say, claim to do, they're higher in their domestic violence? Let's move on. In the church, let's talk about the happiness. Those that are women that are married to Protestant men consider very happy at 70%. Those who are married to nominal at 59%. You know, there's another study there that I looked up in 2011 study that followed what a God-centered marriage. In other words, those that say, you know what, God is going to be the center of our marriage. What I'm going to focus on is God. Kind of like Ruth and Boaz, by the way. They're focusing. They're not on in their marriage because it feels nice. Rather, they're centered around what God is going to do in the redemptive work. That study shows that 94% of those marriages are considered very happy. You want to have a good marriage? By the way, the number one marker for somebody happy in the United States is somebody in a happy marriage. So we go to all this counseling, we do all these different things, read all these books, but if actually what we did is we centered ourselves and our lives around Christ, number one statistic for happy people. Go ahead, next one. Let's talk about kids since it's Father's Day. Kids in a committed Protestant father, with a committed Protestant father, check this out, 65% more likely to praise and hug their kids than a nominal. Remember we said it's not just providing food. A nominal guy could do that, but a guy that's committed, what do? They love their kids. They provide for their kids in other ways. Check out that next one. Committed Protestants spend 3.5 more hours a week with their kids than secular fathers. Here's the thing I hear all the time. I don't really have time to do things with church. You don't know how busy my life is. I've got to take care of the kids. Statistically pointing, that's a lie. In other words, the more committed you are to Christ and the belief in Jesus, and the more committed you are to a local body, the more you actually care for your kids. The statistics, guys, I'm not making this stuff up. Move on to the next one. Summary. Here's my summary. Ready? The committed Protestant is the number one way, the contributing factor to a happy marriage. Children in the home where a father is a committed Protestant, are far more likely to continue in their faith. By the way, that's another statistic. You want to talk about kids leaving the church, dads? The number one way for you to keep your kids in the faith is for you to be here on a Sunday morning and be in a small group. That's the number one way, by the way, statistically. When a kid, it actually doesn't seem to matter that much if a mom's there. I'm sorry, I love you moms, you're good, you're important. But what the statistics shows is if you want your kids to walk away from the faith, then you don't come. That's a reality. But if you want your kids to know and love Jesus, you have to be a part. Lastly, the summary that the nominal actually fits the stereotype that the secular world is saying that a believer is. They spend less time with their kids. Their wives are less happy, and they're much more likely to get divorced. I don't know if I have one more slide. Oh, there we go. I used to work with kids, and I remember taking a class, and they told me that with a boy without a male influence, and I know I'm getting long here, was 200 times more likely to wind up in prison. So this is a bio dad, and I actually think that if your kids are not your bio, that's fine. You can act like it, but this is a kid where the bio dad is, or the father is absent. Just look at the statistics, like percentage of men who are idle at 35. In other words, they haven't launched. 11% versus 19. Next one. Percentage of young men who've been arrested. There's the statistics that I was talking about. The yellow, again, is the absent father. Next one. Percentage of young men who graduate from college. That's huge. And some of you are like, I didn't graduate from college. That's fine. It's just one of the markers that they're using. Next one. This is by a feminist who wrote a book called The War Against Boys. So this is not coming from a church background. This is what she said. History teaches us that masculinity without morality is lethal. In other words, those that don't truly believe, those that don't truly live out that moral life, because of there's a sovereign God above them, and they want their kids to know, they're lethal. But masculinity constrained by morality is powerful and constructive and a gift to women. Men in this room, if you are committed to Jesus and you're committed believer, you are a gift to the women in your life. We talk a lot in the church about social justice. I think I've become convinced the number one way for social justice to happen is for you as a man to be a godly man. You will change the world. Do you want to change the world, mom, of that kid? Raise a godly boy. Right? Raise a godly boy. Do you want to fix... Guys, we talk about politics and things all the time. The messed up part of this world. Politics don't change it. Complaining doesn't change it. Being a godly man changes it. You want to change the world? Be a godly man. Be a Boaz. Step in the gap for those that can't. That Wilcox found that the number one contributing factor to happiness is marriage, and that a God-centered marriage is the number one way to be happy. Statistically, a godly man are the happiest, most joy-filled, most active changers in our society. Some of you might need to start stepping up. What three of those ways? Can you go back to the three different things at the beginning? Yep. Which way do you need to work on? Are you the same in the dark as you are in the light? Is your word good for it? Are you good for it? If not, let's start praying about it. Let's meet with other guys. Hey, I'm struggling with this. Are you a protector, not just packing heat? Are you a protector? Are you a provider? Maybe you need to do that extra education. Maybe you need to do something to provide more. Or maybe you need to work less so that you're around the home. Let's pray.